As always, I appreciate the talent of other authors telling their stories. I'm not sure Katie knew what it was like to be cheated on, rejected, and disrespected. Perhaps after Jeff manages to let her know how it feels, she will have a different perspective on the subject. No. Haven't you ever considered that sometimes it can be a really great time in your life to be spoiled, and sometimes it can totally suck? So, at that moment, my life was messed up, and I didn't like it one bit. Sometimes things don't go exactly as you plan. Take my business, for example. I'm good at what I do, but for reasons known only to the gods of fate, I've had a hard time making a difference in my life lately. Things haven't been going exactly as I planned. We haven't gotten to the point of kicking the wolves out the door. It's just that with the state of the economy the way it is right now, it seemed like business was lagging behind. Things were tight, but we were getting by. Heck, we were still able to keep the girls in college, so it wasn't that bad, right? I know it affected my own attitude toward life as well as that of my wife, Kathy. The last week has only reinforced to me that I have really lost control of my life. Well, maybe that's not entirely true. I know I can influence the minor things in my life, but the things that really matter seem to be out of my control. And then I got a double whammy. I had just gotten my test results back from the doctors, and they were on the coffee table in front of me. Cancer? Leukemia? You'd think, and for some reason I wanted it to be. What about degenerative cardiomyopathy? Yes, that's probably closer to the truth. You see, my heart is turning to crap, giving up. But not as fast as I'd like it to. I sat in my comfy rocking chair and felt so bad I could barely breathe. Why was I feeling so bad? Well, I had just been diagnosed with a festering soup of minor STDs, nothing that couldn't be cured with a course of vicious antibiotics, but the effects were still nasty. If you've read my wife's account of her extracurricular activities, you probably know what I'm talking about. I just found out that my wonderful, loving, and adorable wife is a whore, and as far as I can tell, has been for almost 3 years. The thought made me even more nauseous. How the hell can a man live 3 years with a whore and not know it? Had I really had my head so far up my ass that I hadn't seen the light of day? The only answer I can think of to answer that question in any way is, yes, and believe it. I trusted that bitch, and she stabbed me in the back, and according to her, over 70 times. And that's not counting the 11 or so regulars who visit her warehouse of fornication. She makes me feel more like a colander than a beloved husband. How can a man love you and do this to you for 3 years? If you ask her, she'll say she loves me. She'll try to sugarcoat it and call herself an escort or companion. What the hell? To paraphrase the Shakespearean phrase, my apologies, kind sir, what's in a name? What we call a rose. By any other name it would be, and here I'm using a bit of poetic license, it's still a freaking rose. This damn troll can use any embellished words to describe her chosen profession. Escort, comfort provider, call girl, or lady of the night, whatever. The facts speak for themselves. She entertains for money. She lets anyone Tom, Dick, and Bloody Harry whoever they want as long as they have money. As you realize, any job has its occupational hazards. STDs are the standard for this industry. Registered and government-approved sex workers are regulated for these very reasons, and also, I dare say, so that the establishment can stick their money-hungry fingers in the honeypot. There are many strange people in the world who walk around in just their panties, if they actually wear them, going unnoticed, and as far as I can tell, Kat is one of them. As soon as I learned of my health issues, I set about looking for any clues to my beloved wife's additional work status. Bingo. One very detailed log with names, dates, financial rewards, and even customer preferences and their equipment specs, all in alphabetical order. Right down to the star rating of their performances. Holy shit. I leave it to the reader to guess for themselves what I mean. I also found an article online in which she details the beginning of her nefarious lifestyle. I must admit that she is a meticulous and conscientious little bitch, and this, my dear listeners, will be her undoing. I guarantee you this. As bad as all of this is, there is one thing that tears me to shreds. How in the name of Christ will I tell our daughters what their mother has done to our family? In fact, it's the only real heartache I have right now. A month after my world came crashing down, I was able to get my affairs in order, and I certainly wasn't a slacker. No, Sir Bob, I wasn't. I was a man with a mission. I was inspired by hate and revenge. People don't realize how close love and hate sit in a man. It's very scary when it hits you in the eye. Between constant cases out of town, private investigators, lawyers, law enforcement, and even the IRS, I managed to never once get between the legs of my whore wife. How did I manage that, you ask? It's called a mild form of cardiomyopathy. That's right, I fooled this cheating whore of mine, who, by the way, insisted on being allowed to sleep in the same bed with me. The nerve of a woman. Into thinking I had heart problems, and that the pills the doctors prescribed me seemed to cause a severe form of sexual dysfunction. That's right, folks. The periscope's hydraulics had failed. I almost felt sorry for the poor guy. Such is life. Sarcasm, in case you missed it. I have to admit, I had to do some serious scouring of the internet for symptoms and remedies. Started with lame pencil syndrome and worked backwards until I came up with a plausible condition that was plausible. Don't forget, this slut was also a medical professional, so I had to do some serious homework to make sure she didn't suspect anything. I had to admit that she was trying her best, but all I could do was picture her with her legs spread and some fat guy with sweat rolling down his ruddy face pounding into her, and that got me. Good night, Irene. After several ineffective attempts on her part to boost my morale, I convinced her to leave it at that until I finished my medication. I don't know why she was so upset with me since she wasn't lacking in sex at all. I'm surprised she was even interested in being with me. But something got me thinking. Working in a hospital, you'd think this dumb bitch would be watching her health. I don't know, I have no idea. Maybe all that cranial fun has taken out her brain and numbed the few gray cells she has? I was a little disgusted to think that I had to lie to this phony, but I did, and I'm not going to apologize for it. So how did it all work out? It all happened roughly like this. The day before I had just gotten back from my last trip, not that my wife knew about it. She thought I still had a day or two before I got back. I needed to get back because the mother of all shitstorms was brewing. I was the conductor, and it was going to start raining shit on the slut parade today. Jeff, what are you doing home so early? Didn't you say you'd be back on Friday? She asked, noticing me sitting in a chair in the living room. I'm not sure if she came from job number 1 or job number 2, but she looked a little nervous and didn't linger to hear my answer, but went up the stairs from where the noise of the shower running could be heard. Probably job number 2 in that case. When she came back downstairs, she was rubbing her hair with a towel. Honey, are you okay? Fine, Cat, just fine. She frowned. You see, I only called her Cat when I was annoyed with her. The rest of the time it was Katie or Caitlin when I was neither. I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Oh God, please tell me the good news. My day has been full of ups and downs. I really need some good news right now. Sounds more like ups and downs to me. But then again, if she was on top, it could have been both ups and downs, I thought to myself. Doc took me off the heart medication, and Mr. Willie is working at full strength. Really, he said from the beginning it wouldn't last long. From the way she squealed, you'd think the damn woman had won the lottery or something. Ooh, honey, that's absolutely the best news I've heard in the last 100 years. I've been so frustrated not being able to show my man how much he means to me. I think it's cause for celebration in the bedroom. I glanced at the clock. Probably not. See, that's where the bad news comes in. You won't have time for all those interviews, meetings, and appearances that will take up so much of your time. The silly whore looked puzzled. There was such a silly grin on her face that it made me uncomfortable. I had to admit that I sounded pretty vague, and I liked it a hell of a lot. I don't have any plans as far as I can remember, and certainly none for the next hour or so. Wink, 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 wink. Even if we have time for 5 minutes of sex, I have no intention of revisiting the cause of the condition that has left me medically dead for the past 2 months. Cat froze, trying to figure out what I was talking about. Your words don't make any sense, sweetheart. I want you to stop talking in riddles and tell me the truth. Cat, the medication I was on wasn't for cardiomyopathy. It was a batch of antibiotics for a cacophony of rather nasty viruses. Can you imagine what I thought when the doctor accused me of sleeping with my wife, especially when I know for a fact that I've only slept with one woman? Cat froze in place and her face grew grim. What are you trying to imply? Get over it, Cat. You've been hung on your own pedal, dear. I have all the evidence I need to prove you've been deceiving me. Cat's face drained and turned white, and then she collapsed into her chair. Oh God, no, no, no. This can't be happening. Is this some kind of sick joke? I nodded to Kat as she stood up with tears in her eyes. Yes, Caitlin, it is a joke. A very sick and pathetic joke, and I was the victim of it but survived, and now the joke is on you. Can you say the same? It meant nothing, sweetheart. I didn't love him. It was just sex. I looked into her sad, wet face and shook my head. She was clearly grasping at straws, anything to distract me from the real truth. It was a mistake, and only once. I raised my hand with a smirk on my face. Spare me the lies, you damned troll. If you have no self-respect, at least have some for me. You've treated me and your family like imbeciles for the last 3 years or so. You've jeopardized my health and possibly the health of our daughters. Idiots like you have very few gray cells, so you need to conserve the ones you do have. I know I was particularly harsh in my tone. Venom dripped from my every word. I just lost my rag and pounced. Kat blushed at my rhetoric. No matter how many times we'd fought in the past, I'd never reached such a callous disregard for her feelings. She just sat there staring at me, physically shuddering. I found your diary, you cesspool trash. You're a low-life slut, but I have to admit you're pretty successful. I can't imagine how you've managed to keep your hygiene down for so long. With those words, Kat threw up on herself. I got up and went to the bathroom to get a washcloth and towel, not so much for her benefit as for my own. I had a suspicion I had something to say, and I felt a little awkward looking at her like that. After cleaning herself up a bit, she began, Please, honey, I know we can overcome this mistake if we try really hard. I love you very much, and I know you love me. I did this for us, for the family. Please, I'm not a whore. I'm an escort. Never. If this were a sitcom, this would be the moment when the main character turns to the audience and says, See, I told you she would say that, didn't I? But since she didn't, I had to hold back my sarcasm. Well, at least a little. What do escorts do then, Kat? She started to explain her position. Shut up, asshole. It was a rhetorical question, shit. You have the mental acuity of a 5-year-old. No matter what you want to call it, it still comes out the same. You're doing it for the money. That's it in a nutshell. Kat's shoulders slumped as if the weight of the world had fallen on them. Then she spoke in a whisper that I strained to hear. I'm going to call Caroline and tell her I'm quitting, and then we can sit down and talk it over. I know that if I can get you to understand my thinking, we can work things out. The money was for our pension. I wasn't going to keep it. You were right. I'm good at what I do. We have almost $500,000 we can put aside for our retirement fund. I checked my watch again and shook my head. No, you don't. And don't bother calling Caroline. I dare say she already knows about your predicament. I doubt she cares what shit you're in after all. She's got enough problems of her own. Kat looked me in the eye and asked the very question she was probably dreading. Why? What are you going to do? I have money. It's in a separate bank account. I don't need to do anything right now. What's done is done. And like your decision to sell yourself and flush our marriage down the toilet, there's no going back. Caroline and her husband are now at the police station answering charges of pandering and molestation. Unless you decide to run away and hide under some rock, I dare say the police will be here in the next 10 to 15 minutes to take you to Caroline. Maybe they'll let you sit in the same cell. Oh God, no. Please don't say that. You have to help me, Jeffrey. I don't want to go to jail. You should have thought of that while those idiots were stuffing you full of STDs to bring home to your loving husband. You're your own man. It cost me a hell of a lot of work to get myself out of your shit. After the police dealt with you, the IRS wanted a piece of your scurvy hide. All your bank accounts were seized. You don't even have $2. At those words, Caitlin flinched slightly. Why on earth would you do that? Are you out of your mind? That's almost $500,000 of my hard-earned money that you threw away. I told you they were meant for us, and now, after all this, we have nothing? Why on earth were you going to get all that money without me knowing where it came from? Kat just stared at the floor. I don't know. I didn't think about it. I thought we won the lottery or something. The pitiful look on her face told me that even she herself didn't believe she could get that across to me. That statement doesn't really apply to you. You're the only one with nothing but clothes. After you go through the court on prostitution charges and while you languish in your not-too-cozy cell, I will divorce you and get whatever is left of the marriage. I'll still have money and property. And when I've dealt with Caroline and her jerk of a husband and the entire client list in your diary for alienation of affection, I guess I can retire and live the life of Riley. The gravity of the situation seemed to finally reach her consciousness. You really hate me that much, don't you? She lowered her gaze to her hands and sighed. I don't understand how you could do this to me if you loved me. Or maybe you never did. I love you, Jeffrey, and none of this has anything to do with us. I never meant to hurt you. So how could you do this to me? Why do they always say that? And the tears flowed again. I almost didn't answer her question. Instead, I muttered, Don't you dare say I didn't love you. How long would I have had to wait until you brought home to me some more serious disease like AIDS or hepatitis C? My God, woman. You work in a goddamn hospital, for God's sake. Has it never occurred to you to get tested regularly? Kat shook her head, trying to think of some plausible answer. I can't get tested. I'm too well known in the community for that kind of information to spread. It's not like I walk the streets. The clients I serve are just regular business people who need company for the night. So I just put it out of my mind and convinced myself that it wouldn't happen to me. Did it ever occur to you that one or two of those same business people might be picking up prostitutes on the streets? Caitlin just stared at the floor in front of her and said nothing. How long can you manage to keep up this farce before someone finds out about it and reports it to the authorities? And I find myself dragged into your nightmare as well as Caroline's husband? As I said, it took a lot of fiction for me to convince the IRS not to seize my assets. They wanted to do the same thing the police had done to Caroline's husband, seize all their joint assets. I staggered back, feeling my fervor building. Obviously, they paid their taxes, so the IRS isn't interested in Caroline and her extracurricular activities, which I understand you didn't do. But the police found out that Caroline, although she paid taxes, was not registered as a sex worker, and their house was an illegal brothel. So the authorities confiscated everything they owned. You and all your cronies are expensive toast, and there's nothing you or I can do about it. At that moment, the doorbell rang. It's probably for you, dear. Don't bother with birthday or Christmas cards, okay? Caitlin stood up, looking like something a cat dragged in, and opened the door. Caitlin Summers? The policeman asked. When Kat nodded, she continued. We are here to arrest you on prostitution charges. You will come with us to the station to answer further questions. You have the right to remain silent. As the officers read Kat her rights, the female officer turned her around and snapped the handcuffs on her wrists, and Caitlin in turn just stood there looking at me with a confused face and eyes full of pain. Please, Jeffrey, don't let them do this, dear. I'm not a bad person. I've never hurt anyone. At least, can I ask you one last favor? Could you call my parents and let them know I'm going to need a lawyer? I'm so sorry, Jeffrey. At this point, I couldn't hold back the tears. No more than I am, Caitlin. No more than I am. And what I'm about to say will make it worse. Caitlin began to cry almost uncontrollably. I think she guessed what I was going to say. You have no family, Caitlin. Everyone already knows what you did to your family. None of them want anything to do with you. Not your mother, not your father, not your siblings, not even your daughters. They asked me to tell you that their mother died 3 years ago. With those words, I sank down into my chair and covered my face with my hands. All the emotions I'd been coping with and keeping bottled up for the past couple months came rushing out, and I couldn't stop them. The cops just turned Kat around and walked her to the patrol car. I remembered an Italian friend of mine once told me about a saying his parents used when he was rowdy and out of control. Dopo a risata venadi ucchianto, or loosely translated it goes like this. After laughter come tears. I couldn't help but feel that this saying so aptly applies to this situation. Caitlin has had her fun, and now she's in for a long cry. So what I came to after the smoke cleared and everyone had time to lick their wounds, bury the dead, and try to make the most of what was left. 1. My ex-wife was a disease-infested whore who was about to be sent to prison and had a family divorced. 2. Caroline and her husband Chad lost everything they owned, either through asset forfeiture or my lawsuit. 3. Cascade Engagements and Robert Casey had to explain to the authorities why their license to operate should not be revoked. However, that is not what ultimately befell them. The loss of clients and reputation forced them to leave town. 4. Caitlin. Quote, clients scattered and dove into nearby cesspools to avoid my lawsuits. And as far as I can understand, after the smoke cleared, a string of divorces and bankruptcies began. That was not the last time I saw my now ex-wife. I saw her again shortly after she was released on parole, after serving 9 months of a one-year sentence on a prostitution charge. Apparently, some politician was running for re-election at the time and she was being harassed. I was told that 1 year for a first offense is pretty rare, but the authorities wanted to make a statement that they were cleaning up the neighborhood. I know it's all political talk and nonsense because no one can ever eradicate the oldest profession in the world. Kat was wearing the same clothes she wore in prison, the same clothes she wore at home, but now they didn't fit so well. She had put on a lot of pounds, and now they only emphasized her fatness. When she saw me, she turned and ran crying into the crowd. But even then, I didn't feel sorry for her. I was too busy with my own demons. It was another 2 years before I met her again. Hi, Jeffrey. I looked up and saw Caitlin standing nervously in front of my desk, swaying from foot to foot. This time she looked, if not beautiful, certainly presentable, though you could tell that time and a burst of energy had taken its toll. You'd be right to think she looked like a tired old prostitute, but for the sake of propriety, I kept my opinion to myself. Caitlin. Looking around to see who was in the club at this time, I asked, "What brings you here? What do you want?" I tried not to make it sound bitter, but I'm not sure I succeeded. Kat looked over her shoulder. "Yes, Jeff. I'm still a whore, old, tired, exhausted, but legal and still working, trying to make ends meet. Are you afraid someone will recognize me and wonder if you're messing with scumbags now?" I just shrugged. We both have reputations to protect. I see no reason to put them in danger. There was sarcasm in my words. Kat frantically clutched her purse in her hands. "I need to talk to you, Jeffrey. I need to know how the girls are doing. I've never once abandoned them. You have to believe that. I get sick to my stomach at the thought of never seeing them or talking to them again. I tried to talk to my family, but my mom and dad just slammed the door in my face, and neither my sisters nor my brother are any different from them." Kat started to cry. "Please, Jeffrey. I know I screwed up beyond measure, but I need to at least know what the girls are doing. At least something to keep me sane. I'll get on my knees and beg if I have to. Just give me an hour of your time and I'll never bother you again." I don't know if it had to do with the passage of time or the fact that I was having as much trouble realizing what had happened. Apparently, I needed to make up my mind about something too, so I gave up and looked at my watch. "I have a couple I'm expecting to visit. Meet me in the park at the corner of 10th and Vicks, tomorrow at noon. I'll even call for lunch." Caitlin brightened up and almost fell over thanking me. "Ooh, thank you so much, Jeffrey. You have no idea how happy I am. I promise I won't push you in any way. Thank you, and thank you again." She pulled away with a tearful smile. "I'd better get out of here before your friend shows up and decides your standards have fallen below nothing. Thanks again, and I'll see you at the park tomorrow at noon sharp." With those words, she sprinted out into the street twice as fast. While I waited for Dana to appear, I had time to reflect on what might await me after meeting Caitlin. My life since the day Caitlin was taken away to prison hasn't been a bed of roses. I don't have to work, but I do it more to keep myself occupied than for any other material reason. I spend most of my time doing charity work for nonprofit organizations. One of them is cystic fibrosis, as my longtime friend's child has the disease, and I can tell you that it is an insidious disease that is almost impossible to beat. Things like this helped take my mind off the breakup of my marriage, but didn't completely erase it from my memory. I spent many sleepless nights wondering where I went wrong. Could I have even once before Kat's fall strayed from the path she had chosen? I know it has affected my relationships since then. I now take a find them, have fun, and forget them attitude. Very rarely do my relationships last longer than a month or two. I crave the intimacy I felt with Katie and get angry all over again. I was even glad when Dana showed up and helped me push the sad thoughts to the back of my mind for at least one more night. I chose a park with few visitors and a secluded picnic table for our conversation. Not that I needed it for the same reason I had used that table in the past. Caitlin was already there, sitting with her back to me and just staring at the line of bushes that hid the meeting place. I was interested in the fact that I had arrived almost an hour early myself. Her attire wasn't the best, but it was clean and tidy. The clothes clearly looked like charity. I considered staying and making her wait, but realized that was petty, and it didn't matter what time the appointment was. "Did you sleep here last night?" Kat jumped up and turned around at the sound of my voice. "Oh my God, you scared me." She quickly regained her composure, however. No, I don't have much to do in the morning, and contrary to what you might have thought yesterday, I didn't work last night, so I was in bed and fell asleep early. I woke up nervous this morning because I didn't know if you were going to show up or give me a little revenge. I was about to comment on that, but she held up her hand. Deep down, I knew you wouldn't do that. You're not that kind of person, but it still bothered me. I thought it was so sunny and nice today. I could sit for a while and think about what I needed to say. Okay then, that's your 60 minutes. Just please spare me the insincere apologies and ridiculous platitudes, I said, sitting down across from her. Kat watched me sit down. I intend to apologize, but I assure you it will be sincere and from the heart. As for platitudes, you have to have arrogance to utter them. And I don't have an ounce of arrogance right now. You etched it out of me years ago. The life I lead now doesn't leave much room for anything resembling a sense of self-importance, but at least I'm better off than Caroline. I felt my eyebrow raise when I heard about Caroline, and Kat, noticing this, smiled. I thought you might be interested. I live in a studio apartment with a single bed, a chest of drawers, a small sink, and a microwave as furniture. I live in luxury compared to Caroline and can't seem to feel the slightest sympathy for her. When we were imprisoned, she made it her mission to punish me, and I can say I have no good feelings or dislike for her. Caroline and Chad broke up. Apparently, genital warts are a real pain when they appear around the mouth. Caitlin chuckled lightly. Chad had a fetish for cremolaires, and Caroline readily supplied them to him. Now she's shuttling between women's shelters, taking care of business and distant allies. Chad has left town for parts unknown, and Caroline has to survive on her own. At least I have my own rented place and work in a legal low-income brothel. She lowered her head and whispered as if to herself, well, at least for now. Judging by the financial entries in your diary, I would have thought you were on easy street. What happened to the $3,000 a day you were making? Caitlin lifted her head and stared at me with a blank stare, then burst into laughter. I suppose I deserved it. You once accused me of mistaking you for an imbecile, and I'd appreciate it if you didn't try to convince me you were one. Look at me, Jeffries. I'm a 53-year-old prostitute who has aged 20 years in the last 7 years. When all this shit happened, Cascade Engagements went out of business, Robert wouldn't even return my calls, and my regular customers were either too busy trying to save their own hides or so pissed off at me that I couldn't get $5 for the whole night. Kate shrugged and sighed. Word travels fast in this industry, and I was too much of a hot potato. Now I'm just surviving day to day, waiting for the day I follow Caroline and become a purse girl. I sat and studied Caitlin's face. I was trying to figure out if this rhetoric was necessary to elicit sympathy or not. There was no sympathy in her gaze, only resignation. Why don't you get a normal job? Kat only smiled. I realized very quickly that I didn't stand the slightest chance of that. I'd so ruined my reputation that no reputable employer would touch me. The terms of my parole require me to inform any potential employer of my criminal record. If finding a legitimate, respectable job at 53 isn't bad enough, having a criminal record nullifies all chances. Admittedly, this information stunned me, and for a few minutes we sat in silence. Then Kat brightened up a little. There you go, Jeffrey. My life is shattered. And before you say anything, unlike Caroline, who thinks you and I are to blame for all her misfortunes, I don't hold you responsible for a single little thing. Caitlin twirled the napkin in her hands. At first I cursed you for abandoning our marriage and my life, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized I'd done it of my own free will, and for what? For the thrill of the sexual encounters, for the high I was getting from the debauchery behind your back? Caitlin made a grimace. I take full responsibility for my fall from grace. I'm terribly sorry I hurt you so badly. I'm beyond grief-stricken over what I did to our girls. I can't imagine what they went through at school and with their friends, having a mother like me. There are no words to express the pain I feel at night, the disgust I feel for myself, forcing myself to spend another day at work. You told me I was sugarcoating my actions. You were right. It was the money that made me look respectable, but I realized that my clients no more respected me than a $20 hooker on a street corner. The tears were already rolling, and I had to admit I was sick of her. You have caused me unimaginable pain, Jeffrey. But if you feel even a tenth of my anguish for what I did to you, it will be too much for me to bear. I humbly ask you to give me some peace. I know I am not entitled to it, but please forgive me for my presumptuous foolishness that destroyed the only thing I thought I was worthy to live for. Caitlin fell to her knees and burst into tears. I beg you, let me know what our children are doing. Give me something I can hold on to because where I am right now is nothing short of hell. The look on my face must have told Kat what I was thinking. Ooh, don't worry. I'm not going to commit suicide. I don't have the guts for it. Caitlin sobbed and then broke down. I needed a break, and I was sure Kat did too. I'll tell you what. You agree to let me buy you lunch and I'll forgive you for being a dumbass and try to help you bond with the girls. What do you say? Deal? Caitlin snorted and ran a trembling hand over her face to wipe away the tears running down her cheek. I made my offer so non-seriously that she thought I was just twisting the knife. Please don't do this, Jeffrey. I was serious about everything I said today. I'm sorry for everything, but if you can't find it in your heart to forgive me, then I'm going to have to suck it up and leave you alone. Caitlin rose to her feet and bowing her head finished. I can see that you still hate me, so goodbye, Jeffrey. I hope in my heart you can get over this and move on with your life. Please tell our girls that I still love them and wish them well. As she turned to leave, I said, I never answered that question, did I? Kat froze for a moment but said nothing. You asked that question right before you left on the day of your arrest. You said, you really hate me that much, don't you? You repeated it just now. Kat nodded. Just to be clear, no, I don't hate you. I don't even hate you. I hate what you did. I wanted to strangle you. I wanted to kick you to death, but not because I hated you. I loved you with all my heart because you took my wife, my life, my family, our future, that we had worked for our entire married life and killed it. I loved you then, and oddly enough, I still do. I brushed the leaves off the table and continued. Like you, it took me years to make sense of what happened, and when you left last night, I realized I'd traded one whore wife for a whore ex-wife. I hadn't made up my mind. All I did was repaint my life white and hated every time the old life made itself known. Yes, you hurt me, but after I kicked you out, I kept hurting myself, and I need to stop if I want to find peace. I looked directly at her. To do that, I need to show you mercy because what you said yourself is unforgivable. I forgive you, Katie, and while I can't forget and I can't make any promises, I will help where I can. But everything must be paid for, as everything in life, and this sum will enable me to buy you lunch. Katie froze, trying to decide whether to cry or laugh, and ended up doing both. Are you serious? Are you really serious? I smiled and nodded. Ooh, boy. Okay, if that's the price I have to pay, then despite being penniless, I think I can afford it. Both of my gray cells have finally found each other and are telling me I'd be a fool to turn down such an offer. Yes, Jeffrey Summers, I'd love to dine with you. When the waitress left after bringing us our food, Kathy sat staring at hers. Oh my God, I haven't had lobster in years. I hope I didn't drool all over my Sunday dress. Taking the wine, she sniffed its bouquet. I know it's temporary, but I've missed him too. I see you remember my favorite wine. Chateau Carton is the only wine I can afford lately, but it's so overrated. I saw an article in the paper the other day, and there was a picture of you with a tall, slender blonde man. Is that the couple you were waiting for yesterday? She's definitely beautiful. I smiled at Caitlin's attempt to find out about my love life. Yes, that was Dana. She's a regular, atypical blonde. She could find her ass with both hands and a map, but she definitely helps with the functions I attend from time to time. Caitlin sat looking at me for a while. This isn't the Jeffrey Summers I know and love. Did I do this? Did what? Made you cynical. In all the years I've known you, Jeffrey, you've never censored anyone for an outward sharpness of mind. I fiddled with my food for a while before answering. I guess I have. When you're lied to, laughed at, and generally shit on by someone you thought was your rock, it destroys your faith in humanity. Bullshit, Jeff. While I agree that I've probably destroyed your faith in women, especially wives, but I don't see that extending to all of humanity. If you believe what I read in the paper, it doesn't. Do you represent any charitable organizations? You can't be as unhealthy and head up charities as you are. So like I said, bullshit. I smiled. Getting a bit cocky, aren't we? Caitlin smiled back at me. I know when I'm wrong. I know when I have to eat crow. But I'll be damned if I become a coward for reasons I didn't think of myself. I'm sorry I've made your personal life a misery, And I'll apologize for undermining your faith in the female gender until the day I die. But I won't back down if I know I'm right. And I'm right here. Kathy and I spent lunch chatting and generally getting to know each other anew. I don't want to mislead you, but that doesn't mean we have any chance of getting back together. Kathy smiled. I know, Jeff, and I didn't expect you to ever want me again. I'll be happy with what I have. It's much more than I hoped for and definitely more than I deserve. Thank you for your compassion. You've always been a good person. I just forgot about it for a while. 60 minutes with Kathy turned into an entire day, and I think by the time we parted ways, we both had a new appreciation and respect for all the finer things in life. But there was still one thing that gnawed at my sensibilities. To say that Kathy was stunned and confused when I showed up at the brothel where she worked was an understatement. What the hell are you doing here, Jeff? She asked, glancing around the room nervously. You can't be here. It's not right. You have to leave before anyone recognizes you. She was wearing the most hideous ensemble of pink and green candy apples imaginable, all on 5-inch pink CFM pumps. I'm not very good with colors, but this one was not the one, that's for sure. I'm not going anywhere until I talk to you. The stern woman behind the counter grabbed my arm. Look, buddy, I don't care if you want to talk, it's still going to cost you $50 an hour. I turned and stared at the creature from the Black Lagoon. How much for the rest of the night? Jeffrey's not here, Katie exclaimed. The woman seemed to take a step back and hesitated. You seem to be a man who can afford something better than this old piece of sewer trash. I have prettier and younger girls here who will show you anything you want for $500. I had an overwhelming urge to destroy him right where he stood, but I realized that some huge gorilla would stand up and demand a high price for this mistake. If I wanted something better, I wouldn't shop in this rat-infested hole, would I? So how much? Caitlin just stood there, kneading her hands. I could see the disgust on her face as she smirked back. $200 for you, sweetheart, but no rough stuff. It'll cost you more. I tossed the 2 bills on the counter and grabbed Katie's hand to leave. Where the hell are you going? I turned around and snapped back. You don't think I'm going to stop there, do you? You never know what a person might pick up. Don't worry, she won't get hurt. With those words, I grabbed Katie by the elbow and dragged her away from there and down the street. Please, Jeffrey, slow down. These shoes are clearly not designed for walking, let alone running, she pleaded, stomping along beside me. I slowed my step, then stopped. You're right. You look like a damn clown in that outfit. Looking up and down the street, I found what I needed. Pulling her into the nearest clothing store, I told her to follow me and keep her mouth shut. Skillfully, going through the clothes on the racks, I picked out something I liked and, taking a beautiful creamy knee-length skirt from the rack from the A-line, I held it to my chest. Take it. Next was a modest blouse with a high neckline and ruffles down the front. Katie said nothing as I picked up a jacket to match the skirt, and then headed for the underwear. I doubted she wore a bra, judging by the saggy cups of a size 36C, but I found a simple white lace bra and bikini and a pair of tan stockings. Take them and change, while I pick out some practical shoes for you. When Katie came out of the fitting room, she looked 1,000% better. I handed Katie the bone shoes with an inch heel and asked our assistant, do you have a bathroom and makeup she could use? I'll pay you for it. The assistant smiled and nodded, holding out a small cosmetics bag. Over there! She pointed to the back of the store. I handed the cosmetics to Kathy. Get that stupid shit off your face and come back here. While Kathy was gone, I paid for the help, and when she came back, she looked great. A little eyeshadow and lipstick made her look like $1,000,000. Now that's what I'm talking about. The aide chuckled, watching Katie blush. I'm impressed, sir. You certainly know a thing or two about women's fashion. I'm also baffled that you picked everything out perfectly in just 10 minutes. Remind me not to go shopping with you. She chuckled. To a questioning look, she replied, you take the fun out of shopping. Kathy and I giggled as I gathered the clothes and shoes Kathy had brought to the store into a pile, pulled out a $50 bill and held it out to our assistant. Would you mind burning this for us? The girl smiled, tucking the bill into her bra. My pleasure, sir, and thank you for shopping at Willow's. Back on the street, Kathy looked like the perfect 50-year-old housewife as she stopped me. Now what? You've made me look like a wife and mother from decent society, even though we both know it's an illusion. Now we're going to find a quiet place to have a drink and have a serious talk. I sat across from Caitlin, sipping my wine. She looked almost as good as she did before all this started, but she was right. She had aged, but with the right makeup and clothes, it was 10 years in the last 7, not 20. She looked more dejected than happy. Why am I here, Jeff? Why this farce? We both know I have to get back to my essence, and all this does is remind me of what I've lost. Signet, do you still want to try your hand at being a remorseful mother? You mean apologize to our girl? You know I want to, Jeff, but I just don't think that's the way to do it. I've had enough of lying. I can't and won't lie to them. They'll see this disguise and they'll laugh at me. I can't cope with this, Jeffries. I'm not asking you to lie, but you need to realize that as long as you continue to be promiscuous, they won't want anything to do with you. You need to change jobs. Caitlin sighed. We've been over this. With my age, track record, and reputation, no sane employer is going to touch me off a 40-foot barge. I'm stuck with what I've got. Then she bloody well started crying. For God's sake, don't cry, woman. You have no makeup to repair your face. I held out a handkerchief for her to blot her eyes. There is one possibility. You could try to become self-employed? Katie squinted puzzledly. Don't be stupid. I don't have the money to start my own business, and even if I did, you've lost all chance of getting any worthwhile clients. It's no different than working in a brothel, even if I owned one. I'll just end up just like Claire, and the girls won't want to date me anyway. Claire? Who the hell is she? Caitlin shook her head. The woman you paid $200 to this afternoon and then started belittling her. I'm surprised she didn't pull away and slap you. Nobody talks to her like that, especially the Jonases. I have a feeling that when I get back there, she'll have some particularly nasty request from a client that I'll have to fulfill. Ooh, you mean the maggot? Well, she pissed me off, and don't worry. Let her service her lowlifes, you won't be back. I sank down in my seat and circled the bottom of my beer glass around the coaster in front of me, not really looking at Kathy. Look at me, Jeffrey. I have to go back. If I don't, it's a backwards alliance with Caroline and the women's shelters. Is that what you want? I looked at Kathy with a smile on my face, but she was clearly annoyed, and I had to laugh, and she leaned back in her chair angrily. I can see that you're caught in an ever-tightening circle that will eventually drive you up your own ass. Heck, you've had your head up your own ass for years, so I'm guessing you're headed in the right direction. I needed her to do something first before I told her my idea, so I handed her my cell phone across the table. First of all, pick up the phone and tell that maggot she can go have some fun. Katie hesitated, trying to figure out what I was up to. Do it, Katie. I'm not kidding. To her credit, she did, and then sat back down. Okay, I basically just threw myself out there. If you have nothing better to do, I'll sleep with Caroline tonight. Katie threw me a glare, and I continued. Who said anything about opening a brothel? I was thinking more like a coffee shop. Kathy sat down and thought about it. I could see the wheels turning in her head. Okay, I'll tell you. I've been indoctrinated into one way of thinking since this nightmare started, but it still won't help me financially. I don't have the capital to open something like this anyway. You may not know, but I do. Katie stared at me, blinked a couple of times, and then brought her hand up to her mouth to suppress a sigh. The realization that my words were worth the money I'd spent on her new outfit. Really? What I'm saying is true, of course, but are you saying you're going to help me get out of this bloody awful situation I'm in? I'll be honest with you. I'm doing this more for our girls than for you. If you want me to, I'll do it too. Unless, of course, you like to party and want to stay put. Caitlin sat up and stared at me. Listen, Buster. I went through menopause 2 years ago. I've had no libido since then. I've been going around KY like it's trendy. The only reason I'm still in this business is because I have no other choice. Grinning, I pulled some papers out of my coat pocket. Go through them and let me know what you think. This isn't a free ride, Caitlin. It means hard work and long hours. For one thing, I doubt you'll be able to hire a permanent staff. The most you'll be able to do is bring in helpers during busy periods, but otherwise, you'll be the head cook and bottle washer, and it's all your blood, sweat, and tears. And as for me, I'll get 25% of the after-tax profits as an investment in my capital. If you end up wanting to own the business outright, I'll take another 25 as loan repayment until it's paid off. If things go badly, I'll let you defer the loan until things get better and you can support yourself. Katie read the document with tears in her eyes. She wiped them away now and then as she tried to make sense of what she was reading. Finally, she put the contract on the table, her hands trembling. I I don't know what to say. Gratitude seems insufficient. Me bearing you children is unnecessary. I've been through and done it before. So I will have to promise that I will never make you regret this kind gesture, but my promise has a price. I can live with that offer. What is the price? Said it. You must allow me to embrace you in gratitude whenever I wish. Damn woman, you drive a hard bargain. I had a great teacher, she grinned. That night I met Michelle for dinner. Who is Michelle, you ask? Ooh, she's my latest in a very long line of conquests. I've been dating her for 2 months now, and I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but I thought she looked a little different. You look ravishing, my dear. Thank you, kind sir. You don't look too bad yourself. After I went to my house and had one of the wildest nights I'd had in a long time, Michelle asked, Wow, what was that? Did you have a good time? Said, I think I can handle it. There's nothing better than starting the day with something nice, especially when that nice thing is being done to you. Michelle wasn't fooled. What happened? Let's just say I put the last of my ghosts to rest. We lay looking up at the ceiling for quite a while before Michelle spoke again. Does that mean I can stay here a little longer than most? I really hope so, yes. After all, I'm not stupid, despite my blonde hair. I know about your reputation for changing girlfriends every month. You're a damn good man, Jeffrey Summers, and I was hoping we might have some kind of future together. I'm not jealous, and I understand if you just want to play the field. I'm just asking if I can be there at the top of the heap instead of at the bottom. That's when I realized that what I did for Katie was already paying off. You're a good woman yourself, Michelle Daniels. I think I've had enough of my wandering, and we'll see how far it goes in the future. I think I'll stay home a little longer, if that's okay with you. Michelle snuggled into my shoulder. I don't mind one bit. What's more, I can definitely live with it. I dozed off, contemplating my next challenge, mother and baby recovery surgery. I knew it wouldn't be easy, but in the end, nothing was worth the candle. Everything had to be done subtly, and for me, that was the hardest part. I knew that if I spoke bluntly, the girls would get in trouble. Every time I mentioned their mother, I could see the contempt on their faces, and at first it pleased me, but lately it had become very annoying. I devised a plan and then left it to the gods to bless my idea. I had the local newspaper print a full-page article with a picture of Katie looking like a neat businesswoman due to a change in management at a popular cafe, and left it face up on the kitchen bench for the girls to visit. Hey, it's subtle to me. There was no mention of me being a co-owner or financier. As expected, Tara, our oldest, saw the article and nudged her sister Beth. Between them, they were talking in low tones so I couldn't hear them. They never mentioned the article, but a call I got from Kathy a week later made me think it had worked. Kathy, good to hear from you. How are things going? Things are going great. The new machines we put in were a good idea. I've never been so busy in my entire life. You were right about the long hours and hard work. When I get home, all I want to do is collapse in a heap and go to sleep. But all in all, I've never been happier. You'll have to stop by my place for a freebie sometime. There was silence. Then a giggle erupted. God, I never thought I could say that again without being disgusted with myself. I want to thank you for your help with the girls. They showed up here on Monday. Looks like my plan worked perfectly. Balls are all yours, don't drop them. I grinned. I won't drop them, Jeff, I promise. Why don't you come over to my place for coffee so I can tell you all about it? If you'd be so kind, Kathy, I'll stop by your place on Friday after work. So what happened with the girls? What did you guys talk about? I asked, sipping my mugacino. I'm not the type to hit on little coffee cups. Kathy was almost ecstatic to see her daughters for the first time in 4 years. I, on the other hand, was, to say the least, a little surprised. Are you guys kidding me? We haven't spoken to each other, but I didn't expect this. The fact that they came and acknowledged my presence is more than I could have hoped for. I told Susie not to charge them, but they insisted and even complimented us on our service. These are the first steps toward reconciliation, and I have you to thank for that. She then proceeded to hug me to death. The things a man has to put up with to keep the peace. Someone has to do it. Over the next year, little by little, Katie rebuilt her relationship with the girls. Like Caitlin, I'm under no illusions that they will ever be as close as they were before, but I'm sure there will be a friendship between them, if not mother and daughter. Then perhaps a favorite aunt and niece. I'm just glad that after all this time, wounds heal and fences can be mended, even if they don't look as smooth as they used to. Then things got a little more complicated, and if it wasn't for my close relationship with Michelle, things might have been even more complicated than they were. One day, Kathy called me and asked if I could stop by to help her with her taxes, and I agreed to pick her up after the store closed. I was just pulling up to the house when I saw some man take a swing at Kathy and punch her right in the face. I jumped out of the car. She didn't chicken out and certainly didn't back down, berating him. The volume of their voices carried to me on the early evening breeze. "You hit me again, and I can guarantee this will be the last time you do it. I've already told you I'm not going to be in this business anymore. You're a stupid whore. Just because you have a shitty little coffee shop now you think you're a born-again virgin for crying out loud? Once a cheat, always a cheat. I'll pay double what you want. Hell, I can afford another $50 for the whole night." Katie couldn't help but notice me, and something in her eyes told me to back off and stay out of it for now. The fool didn't even realize I was standing right behind him waiting for him to raise his hand to her again. "You're the idiot, Robert. Just because you're suffering now that your precious escort business isn't lining your pockets doesn't give you the right to bully me. Just because Jeffrey ruined your honeypot doesn't give you the right to come here and bully me. You knew what hiring married women leads to, and what you think will happen when one of the husbands takes offense at being cheated. I have lost far more than you have, so forgive me if I don't sympathize much with your suffering." I could see his rage. His body was literally shaking. "I'm not worried about you or the former bastard. A whore like you will fall again, and when that happens, I'll be there to make you wish your precious hubby had destroyed you instead of divorcing you." "Well, then I have no reason to worry. I'm already menopausal, and I'm no longer interested in sex, so the temptation that got me into this is gone. You weren't that good even when I wanted you to be, so now I think you're just a pathetic loser." I saw the determination in Kathy's eyes as she continued. "If they want me back again, only one man has the right to do that, and I'll tell you right now that I don't expect or need him to ask to use it, just so I can show my appreciation to a wonderful man." Kathy looked right past Robert into my eyes with a passion I hadn't seen in years. "Yes, is that what you think? Who is the big man then? Who do you think every woman dreams of? It can't be your ex." Kathy just stood there giggling. "That's my ex-husband Jeffrey Summers, you jerk. He has more sexiness and character in his little toe than your whole body." Admittedly, I was feeling pretty drunk by this point and smirked gloatingly. "You think you're safe, don't you? Well, think again, dumbass." With those words, he raised his hand to deliver another backhanded blow to Katie's face. To Kathy's credit, she didn't flinch when she responded. "I wouldn't if I were you, but you might not like the consequences." Robert held back his blow for a split second. "Very possibly. And who's going to make me? You?" Kathy only giggled, which infuriated Robert even more. "Uh-oh, God, no. But Jeffrey might have something to say about it. He's standing right behind you." Robert turned to meet my fist, backed by all my 200 pounds of solid muscle. That might be an exaggeration, but I worked out at the gym, didn't I? Heck, I had to do it to keep up with Michelle. She was 15 years younger than me, and I needed any advantage I could get. My size 10 compared to his family jewels put an end to any impulses for Robert to procreate for the next 6 months. "Who is that? What do you even see in him?" Katie sighed. "I really don't know." Katie wrinkled her face. "He even squeaks like a girl." As we sat in Kathy's kitchen going over her tax documents, I asked, "So you think I'm the man?" Kathy only smiled. "Don't let it go to your head. But yes, you are a man. You always have been and still are my man. I may not have fulfilled the part of our vow to leave everyone else behind, but I intend to pursue that until death do us part. I don't care if we divorce or if another woman comes into your life, but from now on, you will always be the only man in my life." We chatted all evening, and as we were about to leave, I asked one last question. "If I'm a man, what was that 5-inch pencil shit in your story?" A sheepish grin appeared on Kathy's face. "Oh, sorry, my bad. I slightly underestimated your size. I didn't want the listeners to think I was a total slut. So I tried to make them feel sorry for me that I had to deal with small firearms instead of heavy artillery." I didn't mean any of that. I really didn't. I told Michelle what had happened, but she didn't comment in any way on what had happened. The few times I met her for a cup of coffee to discuss management issues with Kathy, she seemed a bit distant, and one day I had to admonish her. Is something wrong, Mickey? Michelle only smiled and patted me on the side. With you by my side, how could anything be wrong? I really didn't know how to fix the situation, but I didn't need to. The girls did it for me. Katie was sweeping up the last remnants of the day's work by the back door when I showed up. Almost done for the day? I inquired. Kathy looked tired, but her face lit up at the sight of me. If things keep going the way they are now, I can hire someone else to do the dirty work. When we were done with the bills, I paused, and Kathy remarked, I see you have something else on your mind. Is there anything I can do to help? I sighed. This was going to be harder than I thought. I have something to say, but I don't know how to do it. I think I know what you want to say, but I suggest you speak up. You've always been an honest shot, Jeffrey. That's what I've always appreciated about you. I think now that business is set up, I'll back off and let you take matters into your own hands. I think Michelle is starting to worry about how much time I'm spending here, and the last thing I want is for her to get the impression that there's anything between us. She's a good woman, Katie. I know you won't like this, but she deserves all of my attention. Katie's eyes clouded over, but she made a brave face. I know I'll never have anything intimate with you from now on, but I was hoping we could remain friends. I was hoping that, at the very least, we'd become business partners. I shook my head. I don't know, Kathy. I'm not sure that would work. Michelle means a lot to me right now, and I don't want her to feel like she's competing with you for my affection. I knew you'd think that, Jeff. Michelle and I have talked, and she thinks it's a good thing I'm here, so you can have a sympathetic ear for scolding. The old saying, the devil you know. She thinks she would have lost her way long ago without me, and she came to thank me for not trying to steal you away from her. She told me you mentioned our little meeting with Robert and the conversation that followed, and she thinks it might work. I told her that you're too honest to go behind her back, and she agrees with me. That's what makes you the man we both love. Kathy noticed my gaze cast at her. Don't be so shocked. You know very well that we both think only good things about you. Michelle knows that I love you, and she also knows that I wouldn't do anything to take you away from her. I had my chance, Jeff, and I blew it right out the door. We both love you, and neither of us has any interest in preventing the other from enjoying your company. At the same time, we both don't want some other gold digger trying to get her grubby fingers in your pants. So we made a deal. Michelle will be your wife, I know you love her, and she loves you as much as I do. If you decide that this is the path you want to take, my best wishes are assured to you. And at the same time, I get the opportunity to be your best friend and business partner. That is, if you accept me. Kathy leaned back in her chair and smiled. How do you like Jeffrey Summers' Dima apples? What could I say except, put them here, partner. Holding out her hand to me, Kathy took it and laughed, in the inimitable expression of one author. Life goes on. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and watch for the next video.